Are we alone in the universe? With a question that big, no one has an inside track on the answer. The lone syndicator and the million-dollar government agency are in the same boat. The only way to find out is to search.
What we plan to do is systematically search all of the sky that is visible from Goldstone out in California, and we're hopeful, and we can't predict the probability of success, that we might just find signals from other civilizations.
Contact. Proof that we're not alone. NASA began SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, because some of the best minds in science said it was worth doing.
It is now okay to talk about life elsewhere or intelligent life elsewhere, whereas a decade or two ago, it wasn't okay. It was considered too speculative to be worth any investment of time.
Maybe, the scientists said, just maybe, contact could happen.
Life must exist in the universe, and it must exist quite abundantly.
Anybody with any equipment anywhere with the right way of looking can find it.
But it won't be easy.
It's a needle in the most gigantic haystack in the universe.
Still, in spite of the odds and the cost, America went ahead with Project SETI as our best hope for contact. But Project SETI isn't our only hope. Not everyone who dreams of contact works at NASA.
The thing I've been trying to accomplish for the last 22 years or so is to try to home in extraterrestrial intelligence and or interdimensional, whatever they be. We want to lure them into the test tube here.
Meet another UFO investigator, John Shepard, citizen inventor. John knows the one thing that ufology most lacks is hard scientific data. So he's made it his life's work to obtain some.
These things are said to give off electromagnetic interference, energy fields, this sort of thing. And we wanted to lure them in close enough here to a laboratory setting where we could take electronic, electromagnetic, or spectrum measurements. Get something on tape, get something on instrument meters that you can actually measure time, event, intensity, and frequency, and something you can share with other researchers.
Ever since he was a boy, John has had the same dream as the scientists at SETI: contact. Inspired by a sighting he had 22 years ago and encouraged by his grandparents, John began to construct his own radio equipment to reach out to space. He called it Project STRAT, Special Telemetry Research and Tracking. It started out in a corner of the living room. As John's vision grew, so did the project.
It got to the point where machines have spread out into the living room, and we're talking about 19-inch racks, 8 feet high, some of them, and it was getting very cramped. So we decided to build an addition onto the house, which ends up being 740 square feet, 2 stories high, that we could house the laboratory itself in.
Everything John knows about electricity, he taught himself. He's a modern-day Thomas Edison, doing science the old-fashioned way. Alone. No government or university funding. Every circuit, socket, and diode in this place was put together by him, from power company cast-offs or military surplus. There are 60,000 volts running through his basement, powering a signal that's beamed straight out into space. John has no definite proof, but he thinks his signal may have had an effect.
We had some close encounters of the second kind here. We had quite a few very close sightings of small satellite objects darting across highways in front of people's vehicles. So things like this started happening very rapidly, about a year after we went on the air in '72. Shortly thereafter, a small collective was formed.
When all those sightings started happening, John needed a baseline reference, a way to separate the false alarms from genuine sightings. So he devised an experiment to test human perception. A UFO decoy hat.
The HAT is a device that allows me the ability to analyze people's psychological reaction and interpretations of a visual phenomena.
With the decoy hat on his head, John goes out where he knows he'll be spotted. Then he studies people's reactions.
Somebody comes along, it's night, you see something, what is it? What's your reaction to it? Are you frightened by it? Do you investigate it further? How do people react to these phenomena? This very closely relates, of course, to the UFO encounter.
Well, I think that worked rather well.
After an evening spent in the field, John checks with local law enforcement to see if any unusual sightings were reported. The reports reveal a lot about perception.
And in asking some of these people later what they saw, they described things, some of the objects as big as 50 feet in diameter. And this was the HAT, without a question.
But the heart of Project Strat is the broadcast operation. Every day, John beams 2 signals out into space. One, a digital pulse code, and the other, a live radio show. These are the bait he uses to try and lure UFOs into the area. There are no sponsors, no commercials, maybe even no listeners.
And we wish you a good evening and a good night, and peace as always.
But just the possibility that something out there might hear and perhaps respond keeps John going.
I really believe that in expanding our consciousness, this is part of what we must now deal with. As we've matured and developed technology and gone outside of our own world, we've also opened up the possibility that there's other intelligences all around us, that there are other life forms out there. Whether they're friendly or hostile, we need to be prepared. We need psychologically and technically to be ready to confront this or deal with it as it appears, or we may be an extinct species.
7 days a week, 365 days a year for 22 years. He has no help and he never calls in sick. The door is always open at Project Strat, and John is there, waiting for contact.